It's time for Fox and Friends.
And welcome aboard, folks. We got Peter Johnson in today for Brian, who's out. We've got Laura Ingraham joining us from our nation's capital. We're going to start, Laura, talking about the big Supreme Court cases that were decided yesterday. We know you used to work there at the Supreme Court. First case, 5-4, Supreme Court ruled that the closely held companies can avoid paying contraception because of their religious beliefs, also known as the Hobby Lobby case. It's a win for religious freedom, Laura. And yet the political left, you would have thought they took that out and replaced it with Sharia law.
Yeah, well, they believe that the right to abort or to use abortifacient drugs or whatever contraceptive is the favorite of the day, that right trumps every other right in the Constitution. I mean, that the Constitution, frankly, itself is an antiquated little document that needs to give way to the supreme sagacity of Barack Obama and his minions. So for them, the Constitution is something that's just you have to get around if you can. And what Justice Alito did in this very narrowly tailored decision is he said that under the Religious Freedom and Restoration Act, the definition of the word person has to include these closely held corporations, sure, as it does in the federal law, as it's codified. The court has already determined that that nonprofit corporations, you can use the word person, actually describes the people as part of that corporation. So there was no logical way that they could say suddenly that, oh, these are not people under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Sure. So it was very narrowly tailored. Alito went overboard, I thought. I don't think he had to go as far as he did to say that this does not mean that employers can opt out of all sorts of other medical procedures and so forth, contrary to what Hillary said yesterday, where she said, oh, this is going to mean that you can't do blood transfusions. Right. That issue was actually raised by Alito specifically, and he said, no, that's not what we're deciding here. And so it was very narrowly tailored in the end.
Well, there was some specific outrage from one end too. Terry O'Neill from the National Organization for Women, or the National Organization for Some Women, as I like to call it, said this, yeah, and I'd love your reaction.
I think it's also really important to remember. Apartheid in South Africa was justified on religious grounds. The Southern Baptist Convention justified slavery and later Jim Crow and segregation on religious grounds. There are some religious beliefs that we no longer honor in our government, and the Supreme Court is simply wrong to honor gender bigotry that Hobby Lobby stores and Conestoga Wood are promoting. That's just wrong. It's bigotry to keep women away from having basic health care.
You say?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of these women have really bad cases of the vapors over this case, and they're doing so only for political reasons, right? They get that I think most people see this and they say, wait a second, okay, so these women who decide on their own to work for these closely held public companies like Hobby Lobby and the few other plaintiffs in this case, that they are now not considered real people because sure, they're not able to get abortifacient drugs from Hobby Lobby's insurance. When they can go to Planned Parenthood, by the way, we as taxpayers give Planned Parenthood $500 million a year, okay? They can go to Planned Parenthood, they can go anywhere else, they can get their own policy. The government can also pay for it, which is probably what's going to happen. The idea that there is no way for these women to get the very small class of abortifacient drugs and other contraceptives that Hobby Lobby, on sincere religious grounds, believe violates their religious conscience. Sure, is ridiculous. And she knows it, and the left knows it, and Hillary knows it. This is a cynical game they're playing, and I think it's time for common sense thinking Americans to call them out on it. Their agenda has failed women economically. Women are not better off than they were 6 years ago in the United States of America. They know it, and they're trying to use this to try to gin up their old Sandra Fluke deal, and I think most people see through it.
Let's talk about closely held corporations for a second. You're a great lawyer. They're about 90% of America's companies. What's a closely held corporation?
5 individuals, and Justice Alito said that if the 5 individuals in the closely held corporation hold more than 51% of the company, that's how they're going to tailor this case. So in other words, if it's a Walmart, a big corporation with with huge numbers of stockholders, that this case does not apply to that. So that's a whole other set of challenges for litigants in a religious freedom case. So these are specifically tailored. So you could say, look, these 5 individuals, they own most of the company. Why do they lose their religious rights just because they're doing commerce in the United States? Right. They don't lose their religious rights. And again, the women can still get abortions who work for Hobby Lobby. They can still get all these abortifacient drugs. Hobby Lobby can't do anything to stop women who work for their company to do all these procedures if they want to do that. None of that changes. Women don't lose any real rights after Hobby Lobby. It's just that those specific class of abortifacient drugs and other contraceptive devices that Hobby Lobby itself, on religious grounds, does not have to pay for. That's what this case is about, and any other attempt to spin it otherwise is absolutely ludicrous.
You're absolutely right. I'm glad you put it that way. All right. Meanwhile, the president is having a really bad week. 2 bad cases at the Supreme Court decided against him. Plus, he's finally seen the writing on the wall. Republicans are not going to tackle immigration reform this time out. I know you're delighted about that. That means he's going to get, he's going to get out his pen. He's going to get out his phone. Here's the president yesterday in the Rose Garden. Listen, Laura.
The failure of House Republicans to pass a darn bill is bad for our security, it's bad for our economy, and it's bad for our future. America cannot wait forever for them to act. And that's why today I'm beginning a new effort to fix as much of our immigration system as I can on my own, without Congress. I take executive action only when we have a serious problem, a serious issue, and Congress chooses to do nothing.
And only on days that end in Y. What do you think about that?
I pity the poor students who had to have him as a constitutional law lecturer if what they got out of their classes is that the President of the United States, the chief executive, can essentially suspend our separation of powers, our checks and balances, which the framers beautifully crafted to avoid the situation that he, in fact, is perpetuating right now, where a man who doesn't get his way as our chief executive can just come in and say, you know something, you didn't do what I want you to do, so I'm going to take over the role of the legislator. I'm going to be the supreme leader here. I am going to enact my own rubric of immigration procedures and amnesties, and I'll throw in a little enforcement for window dressing, but you didn't do what I wanted you to do, so I'm going to do it on my own. Okay, that means that we don't really have a meaningful constitutional separation of powers. That is not what our framers intended. And again, people have to understand this. If the President of the United States can do this on an issue as important as immigration law, what else can he do it on? I think we should start talking about what happens in a republic when the president usurps legislative authority in the manner that he's about to do. And I think governors of these border states, they have to make a decision here. Are they going to let their states be overrun as they are? Does state sovereignty matter anymore? Or do we have to just sit back and allow this usurpation to go on? I think Congress has to take this very seriously. The president is only going to be stopped, I believe, if a federal court stops him from doing so, or if these governors decide, you know something, this doesn't work for us. We're going to do what we can to enforce these borders. You want to send troops down to stop us? Okay, but we have an obligation to our states and our citizens. I think he's setting up a crisis here, and not that we don't already have a crisis down at the border, but I think this is very dangerous for a constitutional republic as we have, and it's flagrant. Yeah. What happened yesterday was flagrant. It does appear that we're getting to the tipping point, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable. Right. The guy just gets faced in 4 Supreme Court decisions, and he walks out there and he acts like he won all of them unanimously. It's unbelievable. All right, wow. Laura Ingraham, you don't need coffee this morning. We got you all riled up for your radio show. Kicks off about 50 minutes. See what Peter? No, it's Peter's there. When Peter's there, it's a high octane. Hey, the questions you pose are the questions that will dictate our future in this country. So thank you.
Got everybody thinking, Laura. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, 10 minutes after the top of the hour, the First Lady of Headlines.